Good morning, Mark Murphy with TravelTube.com. It has been an interesting few days of travel news, and I'm going to give you some of the greatest hits that we've been hearing about and seeing when it comes to travel. So, for instance, you've had the Southwest Airlines poop flight. That was a flight from Philadelphia to Midway. If you haven't heard about it, I'm going to cover that. It's been around for a few days, but I don't think it's any less shocking. Walt Disney World is getting sued yet again. Why? Well, you're going to find out. I don't think it's a legitimate lawsuit, but it is what it is. The other thing I want to address is the headlines where people fall off cruise ships. Do people really fall off cruise ships? And what about the folks that can't make it back to the cruise ship and then whine and bitch about not being able to get back on and being stranded, even though it's their own fault? And this literally happens all the time. And obviously, the media loves to get these people on and hear about their personal story. And, oh my God, it's so horrible. I can't believe I missed my cruise. Yeah, but maybe, just maybe, next time you'll pay attention to what's going on and you actually listen to the instructions that tell you why that's going to be a problem for you. So, first up, the Poop Express. Now, most people don't realize that, there are bathrooms on board cruise ships. And credit to the New York Post. They told us about this. I think they're the ones who broke this. But a lady on Southwest Airlines decided to strip naked. Let's back up. So what do you do when the plane's approaching landing? Stay in your seat. Stay seat belted. Common sense. You can hit some turbulence. You're dropping from 36,000 feet all the way down to zero to land with your wheels on the plane on the tarmac. Well, this lady couldn't help herself. Obviously, she's got some issues. She stripped naked on landing and then proceeded to, I assume the squat position and poop in the airline seat. Now, it's bad enough that when you book an airline seat, you sit next to the bathroom. It's annoying because it's a constant stream. There's always people standing right next to you, this and that. But we found something worse. I don't know if this has been done before. I've heard people wetting themselves, getting so drunk, that they can't wake them up after they land and so on and so forth. But have you ever been on a plane where somebody got butt naked? That would be pretty shocking. And then to add insult to injury or to poop, they poop. They poop. Now, Southwest said they're going to take care of things. They're going to basically take the plane out of service, which they did, and they're going to, quote, clean it. If they would only disclose the actual seat number, because you could be sitting in that seat on your next flight. Yeah, all right, man. But it's going to be clean. How clean? It just doesn't matter. That seat should be burned. Southwest, you should talk about how you removed the seat and you torched it. Other than that, that's beyond disgusting. So that was the flight issue just the other day. Now, we know flying sucks. Nobody likes to fly. I don't care what the airlines say. Flying is a means to an end. And the old days of the glamorous flights, sitting in first class, sipping on a bourbon or a champagne. Yeah, no. Now it's try not to get pooped on while you're flying. And just imagine the smell. Oh, man. You can't make this stuff up. You literally can't make this stuff up. So that was our first hit. And it's a doozy. But at the same time, you know what? There's other things going on this past week. The thing that cracks me up this week is how some folks decided that, I'm going to sue Disney. Now, interesting enough, suing Disney because you went to something called Typhoon Lagoon. Now, do you know what a typhoon is? Yeah, typhoon is basically the equivalent of a hurricane. You know, we get hurricanes here in our hemisphere, and out over in the Pacific, they get typhoons. So Typhoon Lagoon would make you think it's going to be a little crazy, little bit crazy. Well, now, the best part about this, the woman is suing because she was in the wave pool with her child, and she was turned sideways and she got hit by the wave. I know it's insane. You're in a wave pool and you get hit by a wave. Who could have predicted that? Anybody over there? Yeah. She got hit by a wave and got knocked over by a wave. I'm going to sue the Atlantic Ocean next time I'm in New Jersey, coming up very shortly in the summer. If I get hit by a wave and get knocked down, I'm going to sue the ocean. I don't know who else to sue. Maybe I'm going to sue the local township. I'll sue Long Beach Island. I'm coming for you, man. Long Beach Township, I am coming for you. But you don't really have to worry, because I'm not a big fan of going into the water in New Jersey when it reaches a peak of about 72 degrees in the summertime. I live in Fort Lauderdale. Yeah, I don't really go swimming in the ocean here. I like my pool better. But that's just me. I know a lot of people do love it. But the best part about this is I believe her husband's a lawyer, so go figure. They're suing. The husband's a lawyer. And he said, if not for her quick thinking, they could have died. So again, what's a typhoon? It's a giant rotating storm that brings wind, rain, and destruction. That was clue number one. You went to Typhoon Lagoon. Clue number two, yeah, wave pool. You're in the wave pool. I wish I could make this stuff up. I can't. I can't make it up. So it's just litigious behavior in this society. It's never ending. It's literally never ending. Now, another thing that happens when you think about it is sometimes people, they just fall off cruise ships. I mean, you're walking along, you got a drink, you just had dinner, maybe you checked out the show, and all of a sudden you're walking back to your room, back to your cabin on the ship. I mean, you fall off. You fall off the ship. Does that really happen? Did you ever fall off a cruise ship? Did you ever picture yourself falling off a cruise ship? I've been on a lot of cruises. I know a lot of people that have been on a lot of cruises. The travel experts I interview every week, they've been on a lot of cruises. I don't think anyone's ever seen someone get on a ship and just fall off. But the media, just Google falling off cruise ships. And what do you see? That headline, they fell off the cruise ship. They just fell. No, here's what happens. There's one of two ways you fall off a cruise ship. And this is assuming you're an adult. Number one, you're an idiot. And you decide that I'm going to take a selfie sitting on the railing 5 or 6 or 7 or 9 stories up to get that perfect Instagrammable shot. And unless you drop the phone as you're falling and someone picks it up and says, man, this is going to go viral. Joe here just did a header off the ship. We can't find him, but man, I'm going to post this video of him falling off the cruise ship. Better yet, one of your friends is videoing you and they capture the whole thing. Could that happen? Of course it could happen. Happens fairly regularly when people do stupid things. And you'll hear about this when people go out on cliffs, when they go on hikes, when they're above a waterfall that's incredibly dangerous and there's signs warning you to stay behind a certain line, and then they don't. And unfortunately, Darwinism takes over and they go kaput. What's the other way you fall off a cruise ship? You jump. You commit suicide. And believe it or not, there are people that will book a cruise with the intention of killing themselves, and they do that. We never know their intention unless they leave a note, but there are people that we have seen who have jumped off cruise ships, who have stood up and they do have cameras and they do see that. The ship will try to find you. Good luck. good luck. And if it's rough at all, you might have regrets as you're dropping down, as you hit that water. It's like hitting concrete sometimes, depending on how high up you are. If you survive the fall, can you say shark food? Yeah, you can say shark food, because eventually that body, if it's not found right away, good chance it's not going to be found, and you're dinner for some aquatic creature. Take your pick. But the media, they can't help themselves. They love, love, love misleading headlines that are sensationalized. But I digress. Why do I digress? Well, it's like a broken record. When I say the media loves bad news, that's about the only thing they report on when it comes to travel. Now, there are some exceptions. For instance, like a Good Morning America with a new cruise ship going out. The PR people at Royal Caribbean, for instance, will reach out. They'll get a major morning show to cover it. They'll put the whole crew on. They'll maybe broadcast the entire week. We've seen that. That's kind of cool. It opens the eyes for people that maybe don't understand cruising, or they read those headlines. They're like, oh my God, that's so dangerous. I don't want to go on it. Or they read about a norovirus outbreak, or obviously with COVID, when the ships were banned from sailing for 18 months, took on tons of debt to just stay in operation, crippled those cruise lines with that debt. And then, but you could fly within a few weeks from JFK to Singapore, no problem. So you're flying in a beer can during COVID with recirculated air. Now, I've talked about this on TV, HEPA filters, everything else. I was never concerned about traveling during COVID. In fact, I did exactly that. We did a couple things. I went to Mexico talking about their protocols. The folks at ALG Vacations invited me down, and I filmed some AM resort properties there. And then I interviewed travel agents who, again, were not afraid to get out there and showcase that they're not just telling you it's okay to travel and sitting behind their desk with a mask on. So Mr. Murray, I want you to know that it's very safe to travel. What are you saying? What are you saying? I have no idea what I'm saying. And you certainly don't, because you're all masked up. And if you're an ever masker, well, you're probably still wearing a mask, despite the fact that you've been lied to and misled and thought that, masking actually works. Now, saying that used to get you canceled. It got me canceled on LinkedIn, which is interesting, because I said something about, all the protocols that were completely abandoned during the BLM riots. But for some reason, they were really important to have for everybody else. You could riot, but you can't go to dinner in a restaurant. You can riot, and you don't have to wear a mask, but I need to wear the mask in the restaurant while I'm going to the table. But I'm so safe when I eat. That's a shout out to the man, Jim Brewer, who was one of the first comedians to actually address this back in 21. And he was talking about being on a plane and how it was so safe to eat. I'm so safe when I'm eating peanuts. But if you had the mask sliding down below your nose while you were flying, you'd have some crazy loon flight attendant, put that mask up or you'll never be able to fly again. Ugh. Yeah, that's what we dealt with. And unfortunately, there's still people, and I'm related to some of them through marriage and blood and other things, just that still believe these protocols, despite all of the changes and everything else. But you can't fix, people that are firm believers in the ideology of masking and everything else. I guess if hey, here's a thought. Next time you go on a cruise, if you're worried about falling off, just wear a mask. You'll be safe. No? You triggered yet? Triggered? Yeah. One thing I learned a while ago is I don't care. I don't care. If you're obsessed with something and it makes zero sense, and you're going to get mad at me for calling you out or calling it out, Yeah, I literally don't care. I literally don't care. And I guess I'm lucky in that way. I didn't have to get vaccinated to do my job because I had sold my company, and I didn't have to get vaccinated to go to a conference. I didn't have to get vaccinated to go drive my RV all over the country and see the Looney Tunes in certain states and certain cities where, the panic was full blown, while in other cities and states, and you can figure out what the differences were, where you could just walk around. It was like there's no such thing as COVID. So I saw all of that, and it was remarkable to me that people to this day still believe some of that stuff. Now, at the same time, you keep hearing about the latest. The latest thing is there's chaos. People aren't going to travel because of the uncertainty and their concerns. And the thing that I find really interesting when it comes to, let's say, US marketing organizations that, get a lot of inbound travel. So take California and visit California. They're concerned that there are people in Canada and other destinations that are saying they're not going to travel to the United States because of Donald Trump and, him mocking Canada, calling it the 51st state, and calling Trudeau, who is a completely failed leader. And anybody who has looked at the numbers in Canada would know this. But they talk about how, with Trudeau, that's insulting. How dare he? What is he going to do? Invade Canada? You got to distinguish. I mean, it's only been what, 10 years since the guy started running for president, and you can go back and look. So if everybody's like, "Oh, you're a MAGA, this and that," FYI, yeah, I wrote a column about Trump when he was running in 2015. And I did not like his rhetoric at all. In the end, was I happy he won? Oh, hell yeah. And you know why? As an entrepreneur that owned a business, to hear from the other side that part of the plan was to raise capital gains taxes as high as 65%. And it would gradually go down the longer you owned your business. Yeah, I couldn't support that, because I know that if somebody told me that if I start a company and I failed, I go bankrupt. And just as a side note, I sold a house, moved 120 miles away from a big metropolitan area, New York, which is where publishing and media lives, because I was in the media business. And I moved 120 miles south because I wanted to make sure that no matter what, when I started my company, if I hit some bumps in the road, I would not panic and go try to get a job working for somebody else. I wanted to make sure that I lowered my costs enough so that, God forbid, things went awry and didn't work out. Because again, I'm bankrolling this thing out of the equity of a house that I had done renovations in, sold at a premium, and then bought actually a nicer house, a newer house, for far less money, for actually half the price of what I sold the other house for, in order to give myself a massive cushion. And my thought process was, and this is a good tip for any entrepreneur that's looking to self-fund, as opposed to giving away all of your decision-making and everything else to a bunch of financial yahoos who, can cut you off at the knees and kill your business instantaneously should things hit a rough patch. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to raise money outside of a couple of family and friends that wanted to invest. That was it. And, I was happy to take their money, but within 24 months, I bought everyone out and said, I don't need shareholders or anything else. And in hindsight, didn't really need that money. But they wanted to participate, brought them in, and then I bought them out at a premium well before the company took off. And then, the ups and downs of the financial crisis, which lasted a long time, and so on and so forth. But anyway, let me get back to the Visit California. So I think it's Carolyn Battetta and others like her are saying things about tariffs and this uncertainty, and how the rhetoric coming out of the U.S. is going to hurt and is already hurting inbound travel to the U.S. And Now it's about tariffs and how that's damaging the reputation of the U.S., how Trump is damaging the reputation of the U.S., and people aren't going to come now because of that. What do I say to that? Okay. I say, nice excuse. The market for travel has taken a hit, not because Donald Trump got elected in tariffs. Okay, folks, and I'm going to show you exactly why there's been an issue potentially with inbound travel. Because after COVID, there was a big boom in travel. A lot of people were coming. A lot of people were beginning to travel, despite the fact that the U.S. would allow 20 million illegal aliens to cross the border to then get funding from the U.S., to get housing from the U.S., et cetera. No requirements, no vaccine mandates, nothing else, right? But if you wanted to come here on a tourist visa and you were going to come into the country, you were not able to do that unless you were vaccinated. So think about that. That was, I think, until, I might be wrong, but I think it was till like May of 23. You had to be vaccinated to come into our country. Of course, cruise lines, Frank Del Rio, who's the head of NCL Holdings. I mean, the governor in Florida didn't want vaccine mandates and didn't want this forced vaccination. Make it a choice. Remember, my body, my choice. Ironically, that went out the window when it came to getting vaccinated, even though a vaccine is supposed to protect you. So if you want to get vaccinated, get vaccinated. But what I didn't understand was why the cruise industry that had been sidelined for 18 months was going to force vaccinations. And they won in the lower courts with the governor. And then, of course, NCL, God only knows why, decided that they were going to appeal that, and they appealed it up. And then they actually won. And so you know what ended up happening? They enforced vaccine mandates down to children and preschool kids. So if you want to take a cruise on my ships, you got to be vaccinated. And I'm thinking to myself, why? There's this thing called natural immunity. Yeah, that went by the wayside. And as a side note, I was getting treated for cancer back in 2017. And come 2021, 22, et cetera, when I go to Sloan Kettering for my, consistent monitoring follow-ups, they asked me, are you vaccinated? I said, well, no, why would I get vaccinated? I already had COVID. And they would do my blood work every time I'm there, and they would check for antibodies. And they said, I've got great antibodies. Obviously getting sick with COVID produced an immune response, and natural immunity, which we know from SARS-CoV-1 in Hong Kong, had lasted 18 years at that point. And the response, to me was, why would I get vaccinated? I have natural immunity. I've got antibodies. The response, this is Sloan Kettering, folks, said, well, we don't know how long natural immunity lasts. So what did I ask? Said, how long does the vaccine last? We don't know that. I said, I'll take my chances with my body and my immune system. And I did just that. So there were a lot of things going on. And despite all that, people were traveling. Well, what's happened since like beginning of 22? Inflation skyrocketed globally. Everyone's seen that. A cost for a week-long stay at an all-inclusive went from $4,000 or $5,000 for a family of four to $7,000, $8,000. With the inflation and those prices going up, what happened to people living in Canada? Well, statistics show that almost half of people in Canada live at or below the poverty line. Costs go up, incomes don't follow, they follow a little bit. Cost of travel went up 60, 70% in some cases. And then people decide, oh, shoot, I don't know if I can travel because I don't have that disposable income that I used to have. Now, it gets even more interesting, and I'll show you why. So this, I'm going to switch to this, and maybe this has something to do with it. Let's check this out. Let's put this on the stage, and let's go here. So take a look at this chart. This is right here, the Canadian dollar. Okay. What did it peak at? I might need my glasses to see this. Hang on a second. Okay. Dr. Murphy? No, I'm not Dr. Murphy. All right. So let's go back to, I don't know, pick a time. 2011, 2012. See this chart as it's going down? It's like a ski slope. I mean, this is the black diamonds. Then we get over here on the bunny slope, bunny slope, bunny slope, bunny slope, bunny slope, bunny slope. Yeah, maybe like what's the one? The blues, the blacks, I don't ski. But then you saw a crash here. So December of, let's see, December 21st or so, the value of the Canadian dollar. So in 12 years, it went from parity and actually higher than the US dollar. It went down to 56 cents. So you basically went from needing one Canadian dollar to buy one US dollar. And then it went to what? Half that. So now if you wanted to book a cruise and you're thinking in December, I'd like to take a cruise in February, March, April, because people don't plan a week out if they're traveling from Canada to take a cruise, for instance, or going to a place like California. It's usually not like, okay, I'm gonna book this and I'm leaving tomorrow. Now they tend to book a little further out, 3, 4, 5 months. So in December of 2024, the Canadian dollar crashed to 56 cents versus the US dollar. Do you think that had any impact whatsoever on travel? Yeah, huge. But yeah, they're not talking about that. Oh, I guess who was president in 24? Oh yeah, that was Biden. What happened under 4 years of Biden? Costs went through the roof. But can't say that. Can't say that because God forbid you tell them the truth. So this is just the Canadian dollar to the US dollar, okay? Now, understand that that isn't unique. Let's take a look at, I'm gonna take a look at the pound, because, we know that the people in the UK are upset too. I'm not gonna travel to the US. Okay, whatever. And I say that, kind of kidding, but not really, because I have some relatives, because my wife was actually born in England and her mother's from just outside of Liverpool in the area called Widnes. So let's take a look. The pound was worth $2. You needed $2 to buy a single pound, actually a little more than $2 back in 2007. During the financial crisis, we got down to about $1.40. Now, this is at the peak of the financial crisis, the peak. Things didn't get much worse after that, because they bounced back to like $1.63. You needed $1.63 US. And then it kind of flatlined and it got up to $1.67, $1.70 in 2014. Then we saw the ski slope again. This is the black diamond, another black diamond. I would have crashed right here if I was skiing, and I would be needing multiple knee surgeries at this point. But what do we get? Oh gosh. Down in 2017, in March, we hit $1.21. Then it went up to $1.41 in 18. Another ski slope right here, down to $1.11 in 22. What happened in 22? In the beginning of 22, what did we see? Oh man, we saw massive, massive inflation. What's going on in the UK at the same time? Their costs are going through the roof, and their value for their dollar has cratered. Now it's come back a little bit. And as of, I believe, yesterday or so, it was about $1.34. So could this have any impact on people's decisions to travel? Could you understand why if you lose 30, 40% of your buying power, you might not have the ability to go and do business in dollars overseas? Maybe you pick up a camper and you camp all over the UK. And the great news about the UK right now, yeah, here's the best part about the UK. Have you seen the latest on the clouds and trying to engineer more clouds in the UK? Because that's what the UK needs. It needs less sunlight. I wish I was making this stuff up, folks. I can't make it up. It's ludicrous. But yeah, that's what's going on right now. Look it up. More clouds to save the planet. You don't have enough clouds in the UK? It's not dreary enough? Have you ever been to the UK? Have you ever gone to the UK in November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June? Yeah, you get some sun. You get a couple of months of really clear skies in summer months. But I guess the people running the UK these days think that that's a little crazy. Can't have too much sun coming through. You get the sunburn. And anybody who's ever traveled to the Caribbean and seen folks from the UK on vacation, you know what I'm talking about, right? They get there, they go out, they're as pasty white as I am. I'm Irish descent and Scandinavian blood, etc. So yeah, I'm not a sun guy. I would get sunburned, and then instead of having lobster rolls, they become lobster rolls. Yeah, so maybe that's what it is. It's going to save the citizenry from getting sunburned. Possibly. I don't know, but that's a possibility. Now let's look at the rest of Europe, right? This is the euro. Are you seeing a pattern, folks? Let's see what the euro was. The euro back again. I need the glasses. What can I tell you? This is the problem with getting old. You can't see anything. So back in 2008, before the financial crisis really took off, $1.58. That's what I would need in dollars to buy €1. Then it dropped to a low of $1.23, popped back up, 2011, 2012, and then they're all following the same pattern, folks. 2014, look at this drop. That is that's a vertical, man, right there. Went down to $1.08, then went to $1.06, almost in parity in 2017, popped up a little bit towards the end into 2018, got to $1.24. Woo, back to $1.08, back up to $1.22. Oh boy, down below parity, 97 cents. And just recently, we saw a little bit of an uptick to about $1.14. So again, do you think that just maybe, I don't want to get crazy here, do you think that just maybe buying power, not Trump, not his rhetoric, anything else, which I'm not a fan of, just full disclosure, I think he's much more measured this time around and much calmer. But I think that's because he's had time to see what's going on in the world and 4 years to basically create a strategy and a battle plan. Everyone will figure out very soon whether or not it was the right approach. We'll find out. All of us will find out. But the alternative for U.S. citizens is keep doing the same thing you've always been doing, and the country is going to go bankrupt. And that is a fact. So for people that are mathematically challenged, when you have $36 trillion in debt and you're running $2 trillion deficits, and you've got a president in power for, let's say, 4 years, and he adds $10 trillion in debt, and they all do this. I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, I don't care. You have to look at how these people spend money, and that's got to come to a stop. And that's what they're trying to do. I'm just happy that they're trying to do something. And again, nobody knows how it's going to pan out. But doing nothing, which is what every previous administration has done, including Trump in 2017, when he came into office, they continued to spend. And then because of COVID, you saw a massive uptick in debt. Just that 1 year, trillions and trillions of dollars. So instead of keeping things open and letting people decide for themselves whether or not they feel comfortable going to work, doing what they need to do, et cetera, we rained money down. A lot of it was vacuumed up due to fraud. And we went from being around $20 trillion in debt to now 36 plus. and you had to do something. But let's go back to Carolyn Batetta, who was talking about Trump tariffs and then Canadians, pounding the table about not traveling to the U.S. As a boycott, as a form of protest. Hey, Canadians, I had a business up there. Let me tell you about the people I met in Canada who made a lot of money, owned businesses, etc. Every single one of them had a strategy to avoid paying taxes. The company, the investment banking firm I used to sell my company was a Canadian-based company. They had people in the US too, but they're a Canadian-based company. I thought it was ironic when I was talking to one of their analysts who was working with my team, when she said she was getting married, and in order to avoid the VAT tax, which is huge, and she wanted to pay under the table to the venue that was going to do her wedding. She's getting married. At the same time, a company that was up there that we did business with was selling. Yeah, they were selling, and the man avoided all capital gains in Canada, which are massive, because guess what? Yeah, offshore banking, offshore registrations, et cetera. Somebody who I won't name, I'll just say that there was somebody I met who was a partner in a business who owned a small percentage, and because it was a minority percentage, they were going to incur the full capital gains tax. But if they had a document that said they owned 51% of that business, they would pay no capital gains. And they wanted that partner that they worked with to change the documents and give them like a duplicate document, which stated that he owned 51% of the business. That's fraud, folks. But it always seems like the people that I met, in particular in Canada, from a business standpoint, they would say things like, oh, I can't believe you don't have national health care. I can't believe you got this, you got that, whatever. But at the same time, they had their own private insurance. So they would tell me how great the insurance business up there was for them, paying 40% literally from the beginning in taxes. Oh, but we get free healthcare. Well, it's not free. You're paying 40% on low incomes. And maybe that has something to do with the fact that people don't have the same flexibility, coupled with the drop in the value of the Canadian dollar to the US dollar, to actually get out and travel. So it's a really nice excuse if your business is suffering in the US because you're losing some Canadian business. But it's not because of Donald Trump, folks. It's not because of tariffs. This is going to be over literally in months. And people don't plan anything based on months. They basically plan much further out, especially corporations, especially, if you're a destination marketing organization. But if your numbers are down and you said we didn't pivot fast enough, we didn't see this trend of the collapse of currencies against the US, all you have to do is go look at Hawaii when Japan slowed down and almost stopped coming to Hawaii years ago, and they had to pivot. And then all of a sudden, the people we were talking to, because I owned a media company that was addressing the US market and then later the Canadian market as well, they would have to pivot and be more focused on the domestic US travelers. They loved the Japanese travelers because they spent huge money. They came and spent more time there. They stayed longer, et cetera. So what did they do? They started looking at the East Coast of the US, trying to draw people away from the Caribbean, because if you came from the East Coast on that long flight, then you would probably stay longer than 3 or 4 nights versus the people coming from the West Coast who would take the 5-hour flight, hop over, spend 3 nights, 4 nights, and then hop back, short stays, maybe rent do a vacation rental, but they weren't staying 14 days, 21 days, things of that nature. So they had to pivot. Well, where's the pivoting? Or is it just excuse making? Again, this is not a new trend. This has been going on for over a decade. These currencies, yes, they pop up and down, but globally, consumers have gotten crushed. And they got really crushed because of COVID and the COVID policies of foreign governments, the US government, et cetera, and the mandates that were put in place that basically excluded people from traveling. And that's the thing I don't get about the travel industry today. most people in the travel industry embraced mandates, embraced vaccine mandates, embraced, the ban on cruising for 18 months. And it literally made no sense to me. It made zero sense, but they embraced it all. And so an industry that has talked about inclusivity and bragged about it turned around and did what? Threw it out the window. Because again, if you weren't vaccinated, you couldn't come on my ship, you couldn't go to my destination, whatever. That was globally. And a lot of that was in place, like I said, for years and years and years. So it was okay to march and scream at the top of your lungs, 5,000 people down Madison Avenue, but an Italian restaurant, 4 generations of ownership went out of business because it was too dangerous to eat. Have that make sense. I'm going to wrap with this. Have you seen the folks that get really upset when they miss a cruise ship? Have you seen that? Yeah. That's a lady running with, I assume, her husband or boyfriend or whoever, right? And the irony is this happens regularly. People get off a cruise ship and then they become the pier runners because they fail to get back at the appointed time. The ship is getting out of Dodge and they're like, oh my God, we've got to run. If you hear that horn on the ship, you're done. You're not getting on that ship. And I hope you bring your passport with you. One of the tips is bring your passport, bring any medicine if you get off to do an excursion. And the other thing is if you do an excursion that's sanctioned by the cruise ship, then they're responsible for getting you back and they won't leave without you. If on the other hand, you just wander off, go shopping and drink too much and are clueless, there you go. She's got a bikini and a towel on. That's it. That's all she has. And that ship has blown its horn. It is pulling away. There's no way they're getting on that ship. They can keep running. That ship, forget it. And these are the people on the ship. There you go. You hear that sound? Yeah. Here they come, the pier runners. Yeah, I laugh about it because you can't fix stupid. And unfortunately, there are a lot of stupid people out there and they will actually blame the cruise line. And next thing you know, the Today Show, Good Morning America, whoever is like, oh, how dare the cruise line leave me? Well, yeah, the cruise ship isn't waiting for you. So final thing to think about if you're a traveler, bring what you need in case you do get stranded. Book your excursions, even though they tend to be pricier than other excursion companies that are not being booked through the cruise lines. They will at least get you back to the ship and you'll be okay. You'll be fine. You'll get on the ship, you'll go. If it's a third party, we've heard of some places where they intentionally strand you because they've got to deal with the local hotel in order to get you a room because you're not going anywhere, at least that day. And then if you want to fly to the next island to catch up with the ship, depending on where you are, you may have to fly back to the US and then fly from, let's say, fly back to Miami, and then from Miami, fly to that particular port that the ship's going to be at next. And when you look at the price of trying to do that the day of or the day before, it might end up costing you more than the actual cruise. So people will then typically, at their own expense, pay for the hotel, get back, and say, man, that sucks. On our first stop in Nassau, for instance, we stopped in Nassau and then next thing you know, boom, we got stranded. So we had one night on the cruise and the other 6 nights, we spent one in Nassau paying an exorbitant fee for a hotel for one night. And then we turned around and spent an exorbitant fee to fly ourselves back to wherever the hell we came from. And then we bitch and moan about it on social media. The trolls in mainstream media pick it up. They want to interview you and, oh my God, it was so horrible. I can't believe this happened to you. And they can bitch and moan, but at the end, instead of taking responsibility, they don't. And that's it for today on traveltube.com. That's kind of like some of the stuff that's been going on in the last week of travel. Don't forget Real ID. I didn't bother touching on that because Everybody and their brother's been talking about it. If you have a passport, you're good. You can use that as your quote real ID. But if you got a driver's license that is older, that's not real ID, you cannot fly. Come up May 7th. Correct me on the date. I'm not going to bother checking it. I think it's May 7th. It goes into effect, but within a week or so of that, give or take. And the other tip is if you have a passport and it expires within 6 months or is already expired, don't try to get on a plane. Make sure you check those things. Make sure you check your kids' passports, because if you're a kid, it's typically updated every 5 years. For adults, it's every 10 years. And if you're at a last minute and you need to get it turned around quickly, there are passport services that will charge you a fee to do it. And the key is you can either pay those services or you can book it yourself, get to a passport center in a major city. And if you have a airline ticket that says you're traveling within, a brief period, you're going to be getting on a plane, you can get rapid service. But this is the government, folks, so I would not rely on that. And other than that, that's all I got to tell you. You have a great week, and I will catch you next time.